Thank you so very much for coming this evening. It's lovely to have you here, and we've got a photographer this evening, even documenting our time here together. I want to thank my staff for pulling this off. This is the second time this week we've had an event. It's pretty amazing, and thank you all so much for coming, taking time out of your busy schedule to come and explore with us these wonderful people that we get to meet. It's so exciting. It's so fantastic. So this evening is co-sponsored or sponsored with the West Coast Modern League, and I will introduce Steve now.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Steve Gerrans. I'm the chair of the West Coast Modern League. If you are new to our events or not familiar with our organization, we're a nonprofit society based here in Vancouver that works to celebrate and advance understanding and appreciation for architecture and design of the North American West Coast. And we also like to extend that reach to others further afield. If you'd like to find out more about what we do, you can find us at westcoastmodern.org or on social media and the like. Before we get started tonight, I would like to recognize the generosity of Joost Bakker of Dialogue Vancouver, the Odd Day in Art Museum, and Nancy and Nils Benson and the team here at Inform for your generous support. We thank you very much. There are also many others that have devoted time to us this week that we would like to thank, but there's too many to list off here. So thank you also to all of them. So we're thrilled to welcome tonight Pavel Kuznetsov and Natasha Drabe of the Iconic Houses Foundation, new friends here to Vancouver on their tour of the Russian avant-garde Melnikov House. We've had a wonderful time getting to know them over the past few days now and are excited to be hosting them for the last leg on their North American debut of the Iconic Houses lecture tour. So with that, I'd like to introduce Natasha Drabe, the founder and director of the Iconic Houses Foundation and Network, to tell us more about Iconic Houses and to introduce us to Pavel Kuznetsov. Thank you.
How do I point out this? How do I touch that bit? Okay. And then back is swipe. Huh? Okay. Yeah. Hello everybody, good evening. My name is Natasha Drabe. Thank you, Steve, for introducing me. And we're thrilled, the Iconic Houses Network is thrilled to have you all here. This is the debut of our lecture. We have an annual Iconic Houses lecture touring through Europe. And this is the first time that I should talk here. This is the first time that this lecture is in North America as well. And Pavel Kuznetsov, the director of the Melnikov House and the deputy director of the Schusev State Architecture Museum in Moscow, has been traveling in Europe to 6 places in 5 countries. And I have here a little bit of background of our lecture tour that started in 2014. So we always invite a director of a house museum to tell about the history of the house and show us a bit behind the scenes, what they're working on and what they encounter, what issues they deal with, because running a house museum is not easy. So the first lecture was by the director of the Glass House. Then we had a lecture by the director of Falling Water. And in 2017, a house by Eric Mendelssohn in Israel. And 2018, we had Tim Benton. He is a Corbusier expert, telling us all about the Villa of Eileen Gray on the Côte d'Azur. And these are the houses that we work with our partners. The house in Oslo, Villa Stenersen, is every year hosting the lecture. This is the house in Cologne by Oswald Matthias Ungers, and they also host the lecture. And our partner in Rotterdam is the Sonneveld House, modernist house from the 30s. and then the Villa Müller in Prague, and Villa Tugendhat in Brno. And then this year for the fair, oh, this is Pavel in October in Europe. And so this year we are here for the first time. And Iconic Houses is a network of 20th century house museums. You all have our brochure on your chair. And, but these are house museums from the 20th century. Either professional museums or private houses that have been so significant for architectural history that the people who live there and own them open them up by appointment to visit. So all the houses you see on this website can be visited. And there's only one house in Canada on our map, and that's the Strutt House. And does anyone here has heard about this house? One! Oh my God. Okay. So I hope next time when you visit Ottawa, you can visit this house. And I hope in the future, because we've seen so many magnificent houses, thanks to Adele Weder. Adele, how is your last name? Weder or Weder? I say Weder. Weder, Adele. Thanks to Adele, we visited today already 4 magnificent houses by Arthur Erickson and Ron Tom and Ned and Peter Pratt. And we do hope that in the near future we can extend our network with a nice house museum or a private house that opens up for visitors here in Vancouver. And now for today, I'm happy. Well, our platform promotes these museums, but we also focus on conservation and management, policy and collaboration. And but I just invite you to visit our website and discover all the things that we have to offer. Then Pavel Kuznetsov, he is an economist by education and a researcher in Soviet avant-garde architecture by vocation. He lives in a constructivist apartment in a house commune in Moscow and works as a deputy director. Oh, I already told you. So he has been overseeing the collections and archives of the Melnikov House since 2014 and its transition from a private home to a public museum. He also directed the pre-conservation survey of the Melnikov House, supported by a grant from Keeping It Modern, an initiative of the Getty Foundation. His book, The Melnikov House, Icon of the Avant-Garde, Family Home Architecture Museum, was published in Berlin in 2017. And when not researching, he was the first Russian to successfully swim the English Channel in 14 hours, 33 minutes and 25 seconds. So Pavel is a wonderful host also. When you visit the Melnikov House, 2 years ago we were there, and I want to invite Pavel now to the floor, and he will tell you all about the house that he is responsible for. Thank you, Pavel.
Natasha, thank you for introduction. Hello to everyone. Just we need to switch. So I should start with the fact that house I will talk about today is old. It's more than 90 years old, but as a museum it's very young, so it's just 5 years as a museum. And we, sorry, pardon? We started with a very simple idea that it's architecture masterpiece of the 20s, that's 27, 29. But the more we work with archives, which are actually inside the house, the family archive, architect's archive, the more we understand that it's a historic house. It's a house with a history of architect, his family, history of our country and of the world of the 20th century. So I want to share with you some of our observations and discoveries we made for the last 5 years and to tell you the story of this house, how we understand it now. But as not all of you were there, actually I know at least 2 persons in this audience who were in the Melnikov House, but for the rest we prepared a very short video to give you an idea what we will talk about. Okay, let's start our story and jump right back to the 1927, 29. You see the picture when the house just after completion, and it is at the same place, right in the center of Moscow, maybe a mile from the Kremlin. But as you may compare with what you maybe noticed in the video, it's now surrounding very much change around it. So it looks like very from the street, from a small street, like a very moderate object. But you may notice that two firewalls on both sides. You know, the one on the left, it was a building of early 20th century before Melnikov House. So it was a very successful developers project, and the plan was to build a sister building, that never happened because of First World War, Revolution, Civil War, etc. But they managed to demolish the previous one. That's why this empty plot of land was in the 20s, and local authorities, Moscow city authorities, were deciding what to build there, a kindergarten or something else. And official legend, which is, you might read it on Wikipedia probably, this that Konstantin Melnikov, a young architect, here is him more or less at that time, he applied, he brought a very simple maquette to this committee to show the idea of experimental housing. So his project was presented as an experiment. As an experimental house studio, as experiment on his own family. What kind of experiment? So, pardon. You see this maquette actually, yes, and you see the house from the above. So it's not Melnikov who invented cylinders in our world, but it is him who was trying to show the interplay of cylinder, interaction of cylinder. To use cylinders basically as a models. At that time, end of 20s, Russia, housing crisis, many people coming from the countryside, industrialization, etc. So it was really on the agenda, issue of mass housing. And so here are a couple of sketches of Melnikov. So you may use cylinders to build chains of cylinders, multifoils, snakes made of any number you want. And this was presented also to the city authorities, and they adopted the experiment. But, well, this is true. But it's just the tip of iceberg. Another truth is that it was just a cover, a camouflage. It was recommended to him by his patrons in Moscow City Council, and he was basically a Moscow City architect, to present it in this way, politically and socially acceptable way at that time. Because at that time Russia was a collectivist society building a communist utopia, right? So it was no way possible to get land, private land, and to build a private house. But in fact it was a dream not about future social housing, but about family home. And now I'm coming to a few pictures from family album. And here is the family of Konstantin Melnikov and his wife Anna and two kids. And here is this nice couple, beautiful Anna and Konstantin in almost military uniform. In fact, he is in the uniform of student of Imperial School of Architecture. But it was before revolution. So he was an old school guy, and he got his education before 1917, let's say, before Russian Revolution. He got very good education. And here is this couple, maybe 30 years later, in the interiors of the house. Here is Anne in the living room and salon, and Konstantin in his studio, painted by Konstantin himself. So you may guess he was a painter, an artist also. Actually, his first education was as an artist, as a painter, and only second education as an architect. And here are the kids, Viktor and Lyudmila, more or less at the age when the house was built. They're important actors, players in this story, because Viktor was living with parents all the time. he was stick to the house. I mean, at that moment he got married. He lived with his young family there, but then they divorced and continued to live after the death of Melnikovs in the 70s, and became like a keeper of this house. He was also an artist, so actually it's a museum of Konstantin and Viktor Melnikov. Mila was with the parents till the 30s, but then got married and was living separate from them, but visiting the house, of course. So, and this is just last family picture. Well, sorry, it's all not about architecture, but you have to know. Anna, and you may see that it's a sort of mesalliance, right? Anna was from a richer family, and if you may see her, right here. And this is Kostya, in front of the cow, a son of not really rich milk farmer, delivering milk to Moscow from the suburbs, and later serving as a courier in a firm. And actually he got, well, he has no prospects in his future, but he got twice winning ticket, lucky ticket, in his life. First, he was noticed by owner of this company, a famous inventor, engineer, businessman, Vladimir Chaplin. And he noticed the talent of boy to the drawings and and he paid for his education. He became like a second father for him. First as an artist, then as an architect. And after revolution, second time, social rift of revolution brought him to the top of his career. Yes, so now a couple of words about Dream of Family Home. You see early sketches of early 20s of this Melnikov House. He starts with orthogonal form with quadrats, then more egg shape of a ground floor plan, but quadrats, but you see very unusual with a sort of spiral type structure. Both of these sketches, they show a certain shortage, certain deficiency. They have certain deficiency. You may see that in the center of both projects, both plans are heater, which is important for Russia, as for Canada. Yes, and you became dependent on this heater in terms of plan. So actually, you are very much dependent on it. It's a serious thing. And Melnikov tried to overcame in his house on Krivoarbatsky. You will see it very soon. I should touch very briefly two important events in his life. A couple of years before Story with the House, his involvement in designing and assembling an exhibition pavilion in France, in Paris, for Universal Exposition. Actually, he was responsible for architecture. And this was, this was really difficult task because it was low budget, tough deadline, just a few months, and he brilliantly did this job. You see, it is a very low-cost structure, basically a kiosk made of very simple materials, wood and glass, but with this striking diagonal cutting into pieces, go into billetage, with staircase go into billetage. And yeah, it was at that time it was a sensation. He became world famous for a short period of time. Yes, and a lot of jealousy, of course, in Russia among architects. It was important for him in terms of his social connections, professional connections. He met Corbusier, Auguste Perret, became a friend of Mallet Stevens. He also spent almost a year in France. And, well, we think that the idea of the house, more than just a family home, came to his mind after Paris, actually, when he understood that if you are an architect starting from a capital letter A, you have to build something more. You have to build a sort of statement, a sort of manifesto. Yes. Yes. Meanwhile, this cylinder, Melnikov, this cylinder is still kept in the house. We call it not top hat in Russian, but cylinder, right? And so within two cylinders, you have a third one, and it's in a perfect shape because he wore it, I guess, only in France. In Soviet Union, it was too bourgeois to wear it. Okay. So less known, but maybe more important in political sense, he's involved in a super secret project designing sarcophagus, a glass cover for body of Lenin. You know, we still have this ziggurat in the middle of Red Square, right in the center, with a body of leader of proletariat, Vladimir Lenin. Yeah. And it was a commission without, let's say, without right for a mistake. 5 months of work, he delivered a few versions to the Russian, to the government committee, and most interesting one with, again, with diagonal. He loved diagonal. So we see this crystal, like 2 crystals and diagonal. So, but eventually, the most simplest version was chosen, assembled, and Lenin body was under it till the Second World War. Just to translate for you this, it's in Russian, his phone book of that time with phone numbers of suppliers of metal, glass, and wood, and a very short number at the very end, 511. It's GPU, this is KGB, this is just in case, Secret Service. Okay? And both stories, sarcophagus and Paris Pavilion, with another hypothesis is that a sort of this permission for him to build right in the middle of Moscow, basically bourgeois maison, private house, was a sort of compensation for his 2 big jobs he made for Soviets at that time. So, I know, have you noticed during this short movie, but on this glass facade, right above the window, big window, and this is a living room, you may notice the inscription. Probably it's the only concrete used in this house. And this is name and profession, Konstantin Melnikov, architect. I saw the similar inscription in only one place in the world, and you may see it. It's a house studio of Frank Lloyd Wright in the city of Chicago. And for Mr. Wright, it was, of course, there were business reasons behind it. There is a presentation room. He accepted clients there. Yes. For Melnikov, his client was Soviet state and Soviet trade unions under control of the state. No need to promote himself in this way. So what was it? In his life, Melnikov was absolutely, he was very modest, moderate person. No, not anyway, not arrogant. And we think that it is exactly the words I used already, manifesto, a sort of message, urbi et orbi, yes. I am an architect, I live here, I'm proud of it. So it's similar thing like this. But it was, well, it was understood in the wrong way. Many people thought it's a sort of sign of supremacy. Yeah? But also it was a big political mistake. Let's read it again. Konstantin Melnikov. It's not a name of Lenin or Stalin, it's his name. And it was in the 20s, believe me, it was a big political mistake. So it was like a time bomb, and it exploded. I mean, not exactly the inscription, but the whole story. It exploded 10 years later. In 1938, he was evicted from the profession. It was banned for him. It was forbidden to work as an architect. And he was at that time 48 years old, very young person, you know. I was told that architects under 50 are young architects, so he was still young at that time. You know, you may see that this inscription was really important for him on early sketches of the facade, different from implemented. You may notice it, right? So it was really an important point for him. Yeah, and following after that, 30 years of surviving, actually, his career crashed. His career stopped after that, only in this, not after the death of Stalin, but after Khrushchev's resignation in the 60s, he was rehabilitated, but it was too late. So only in the last 10 years of his life, he enjoyed public recognition. And this house became like a place of his exile. He was never sent to Gulag or to prison, no. But he was a little bit isolated socially, only close friends and relatives were there. Right, and it was like a curse for him. It was his dream. He paid for his dream with money, with everything. He invested everything. You will see later. But also with his career, with his life. It's a very tragic story of this person. And I should quote now the title of probably the best and the very first book about Melnikov, published not in Russia, published in the U.S. in Princeton in the 70s, right after his death. And it's the title, Konstantin Melnikov, a solo architect in a mass society. It is exactly about him. So you may speak about these two cylinders as about sculptural form, as about you may imagine it on the coast, in the desert, in the forest. And really, Melnikov was a master of form. We normally say this, so they are just examples of few floor plans of different types of buildings, triangle for office, cigar shape, with fan shape, and triangle for worker club. Another worker club, club for workers as a glass tower, a sort of multifoil. This anthropomorphic plan for another workers club, so he was famous with public buildings. Parallelogram for bus garage, and two kinetic architecture projects, so rotating floors for newspaper office, and his project for Columbus Lighthouse in Santo Domingo. His architecture is very expressive. It's very often transformable, a little bit ahead of time, its time in terms of engineering, yes, in terms of technical possibilities. Sometimes visionary, sometimes kinetic, and very memorable. You know, it's so yes. You may speak about cylinders as a form, but in fact, he has a very particular task to locate it, to place it somewhere on a very narrow plot of land, which is, you know, deep from the street, rather narrow. Yes, and he was trying to move these cylinders here and there to find optimal place in terms of sun, in terms of insulation, but also in terms of views. So this is his eventual choice. What kind of views? What was Moscow at that time? Moscow was a really big but provincial city. It just became capital again after 200 years of St. Petersburg was a capital, imperial capital of Russia, right? But Bolsheviks moved it capital again to Moscow. But it still was, in architectural sense, in urban sense, it was a city of churches. So churches, Orthodox churches, were really important urban dominants. And for Melnikov, it was crucial to have these views to these churches. And this is a rear facade from the garden, just after completion. Basically, you have this tower with hexagons, right? And top three levels are his studio. And from this studio, you may see, and here is our results of our research. You see the 29. You may see to the north, to the west, and to the east. Views to three churches: beautiful church, Xavier-on-Seine, to the west, I would say Nicholas Carpenter, and to the east, last but not least, this bell tower. Actually, it's Ivan the Great bell tower in Kremlin. So it was really important and inspiring for him. Now, if you compare with nowadays situation, first of all, this church was demolished a few years later, and in the 30s. And if you look this dark blue color, this is all either new or new with buildings with newly added levels, floors. So all views are lost now. But for Melnikov, I told you already, he was an old school guy, so he was really Orthodox person, Orthodox church. He was a believer, a sincere believer. So he never hid this. And this is actually his belief and his faith, something what helped him to save himself as a personality, as a person during these hard years and decades. And if you come into the house, the first space, the first room you are in is a bedroom. And well, 6 years ago, I was there first time. I studied this house many years by books. I saw hundreds of pictures, but intuitively it was a big disappointment. Intuitively being outside, you imagine this minimalist form, and you think that inside it will be also something Bauhaus type, minimalist, constructivist, But in fact, you see, it's a very traditional, cozy, petit bourgeois, if you'd like, atmosphere. It's like a time capsule. Actually, there are some objects like radio or aluminum chairs from 60s, but in fact, it's from you are like 100 years back. It's not a Soviet home. It is something different. And on a very visible place in this house, in the corner, you see the keyboard, the icon, case for icons, the icons and candles from his church ceremony. church wedding ceremony. So it was really important. And you may say, what's about it? But at that time, in the 20s, to put it on a visible place in your house, it was a big gesture. It was enough a state struggling, fighting with church, demolishing churches, and it was also telling something. It is also telling something about this guy. Well, we think now about this house, about architecture masterpiece, but also about, if you'd like, he used a metaphor of mysterious island by Jules Verne in his diaries, L'île mystérieuse. It's like an island in the center of Moscow. You are very separate from the whole city and the whole country, building socialism, etc. Just few meters till next buildings, but you are like on an island, really there. And so Melnikov never was anti-Soviet, no dissident, but he was absolutely non-Soviet person in his heart. So this house is a sort of symbol of this silent resistance to the system, to the regime. I don't know how it happened, but he managed to support this island the whole 20th century. So it's absolutely, it's a microcosm, it's a special world within Moscow. Don't worry, this is the only slide with the words, so the rest will be pictures. Okay. I should say that it's, in a many sense, it's very traditional house. It's avant-garde at the same traditional. So we talked already about religious things, about church, about interior objects, which are very, very traditional. But I should say that the building culture and building materials, and basically it's built out of bricks, stucco, a lot of wood in different rolls. It's like, and glass of course, but it is no concrete, no new materials. It is, like 150 years before Melnikov. So when we learned this, we were a little bit shy about this fact, a little bit, it's not real avant-garde, but in fact it's even more striking when you, like in case, meanwhile, with Paris Pavilion, using very simple means, really, you reach a lot in terms of architecture, in terms of spaces, right? So, and it is, I should say, it is also a very low-tech house. I will give you a couple examples later. On the other side, it's really experimental avant-garde, building. It's not only about outer form, you saw it already, but it's also about plans and spaces. It's about structures made of simple materials, but really experimental structures. Color scheme, we are only learning about it, but you maybe noticed in the movie there were two triangles for the kids, blue for a boy and yellow for a girl. So it's, there was he was a colorist, he was a painter, so he was a thinking of an artist. Functionality, even if it was not a priority for the Melnikov, for architecture for him is an art, is a sculpture, is a form. So art first, function second. So he invented form and then tried to build functionality into it. Not always successfully, but this is, sorry, my personal opinion. And last but not least, what I really appreciate about this house, it is really ready to be changed, to be developed. I give you an examples later. So, a couple of low-tech stuff in this place. So this guy in a hat, what he's doing? He's our guest from MoMA, New York. He's talking. So this is actually there is two lines of this acoustic string phone up, this on the ground floor, these two holes in the wall. He's talking up to the studio, and it's function perfectly, but you understand it's just a pipe, no mechanisms there, no electricity, nothing. And second one, and this is a result of our excavations during a pre-conservation survey of the house. So we found this pipe leading from the house to the single gate, to the entrance, right? So you may talk to visitors before, sort of intercom, but very simple one. Yeah. Okay. In our life, we all dependent on this, on everything, but this will work even, it will be a blackout, Yeah. Second, and maybe even more striking example, a system of heating. He was given land for free for this experiment, but he spent his own money, his own savings for this project. So he has trying to save money on materials, but also on high qualified workforce. So basically he became an engineer also in this case. So basically he was 4-in-1, architect, engineer, investor, and future habitant. So basically dialogue was inside his mind, and it was, unfortunately, or fortunately, in most cases architect won. Yes, so, but speaking about heating system, so you may see on the street facade, which has a lot of glass, so 2 pylons on both sides, they are like a frame for this glass picture, but in fact, these pylons, you may see two grill on both sides, right, below. And this is inflow of cold air in the winter, so basically it's cold air goes down because of physics. Yes, it's heated. There is a heater, calorifier. Again, calculated and designed by Melnikov, basically a stove. And after that, through the system of air ducts, vertical and horizontal, it goes around the house, spreading around, reaching the top. Effect of tower, it is like this cylinder is 9 meters, this is 12 meters high. So reaching the spreading around the all premises in the house. It reaches the studio. Then it's getting cooler a bit, coming back through the main staircase, serving as a back channel for this. But also, in these pylons, on other side, from the rooms, there are also grills. So this a little bit cooled air comes for the second circle. Back to the heater, third circle, fourth circle, fifth circle. We know now from the results of the survey done that its ratio is more or less 20 to 80, so it's always 20% of fresh air, new, and 80% of recirculated air. I'm gradually moving to the point that it is energy-saving house, really energy-efficient house. It doesn't need a lot of air, and it is really organic system of heating. So it really, in the winter, in cold season, it reminds the living creature. It breathes. It inhales, it exhales. You feel it inside. It's really a functioning system. And he calculated everything, all calories, all, target temperatures, inflow, outflow, coefficient of exchange. It's very simple calculations, a couple of pages, made without any calculating machine, manually. But last year's survey, and we got, with smart equipment, more or less the same results, plus minus 5%, so it was roughly okay. So yeah, it's low tech, but it's very interesting and very, actually very complex system with many possibilities for fine tuning. It deserves a whole lecture, but I have to move ahead. About composition of the house, we have this small street model in the garden, and you may see that they are basically 3 levels. Ground level with this very much segmented, separated, fragmented for the rooms, and this is kitchen, dining room, kids' rooms, wardrobe, etc. 2 big rooms, studio and living room. It's like a puzzle. They're installed into each other, right? So he made a very quick decision about them very soon. He did a lot of work on the ground floor, trying to make it maximum transparent and actually more light there. Because first of all, if you remember the early sketches, he was very much dependent on the heater. The heater was a stove, was in the center of the ground floor in 1927 when he applied for, the permission, submitted these drawings to the city authorities. So this is ground floor, this is this heater, and not really optimal, you really run around it. He has no money at that time to excavate, to dig the basement, to hide the heater. Only when actual construction work started, they discovered this underground structure of that, you remember, early 20th century demolished building by developers. So they discovered underground structures, and he managed to dig, to arrange this, to design this basement, and to hide the heater there, and to make a revolution on the ground floor. So it's really transparent, and you are independent of it. So he made, if you compare the start and finish, you will see that only outer walls is the common thing. There, many things are really changed. So it was, I should say, it was a freedom for him because, you know, as I told, he was 4 in 1. So basically nobody was controlling him, right? And well, another important thing is that you may see in 27, through all 3 levels, there are like a stripe window, vertical windows, stripe windows, and no idea of these hexagonal windows, which are a sort of symbol of this house for us now. This is the picture of of 27 when with Melnikov and his son in the center, just maybe a month after they start actual works. So they found already the bricks from previous buildings. They all used, every brick was used for some additional purposes, yes. And we matched the plans of previous buildings and the Melnikov House. So these 2 pink walls, this is what he used from previous architecture to arrange a basement, right? So it was actually a process all 2 years. It was a process of improvisation. It's right word, because it was like, you know, he was changing the depth of the foundations. He was doing, it's like playing piano. We know about it. Well, this is another version of this ground floor plan. You see, it's obvious to start with circular things inside. You have a circular form outside, you do inside. He never did this. He did the top part with these sectors. But if you may compare what Frank Lloyd Wright did for one of the, with Friedman House, one of his Usonian houses in Pleasantville, state of New York, 20 years later. So we are not sure about influence, but we know that Frank Lloyd Wright knew about the Melnikov House because both were participants of Triennale di Milano in 1933, like with personal expositions, basically in front of each other, and house was presented there. So this idea about interlocking cylinders, it was used later also by others. But it is just example that this ground floor plan, it might be different. Basically, you have a free plan, only outer walls matters. Inside, this is not load bearing, so you may demolish all this, you may move them. Yes. And how do you know this? The main source we discovered, well, there are documents, but there is a very nice stuff. There is a calendars of Melnikov, and he used these pages, back side of page for short notes every day. And we know that, for example, that he was actually, there was a big financial gap between what he had, and this was his honorarium from other projects at the time, and budget estimate, almost twice more. So, but he had a choice to go or not to go, no, and he was brave enough to invest this 10,000. Well, they ran out of money very soon, and he had no access to the money, to the credit, and well, what happened? What happened? This is just for you to compare again these vertical stripe windows with building without basement, and what happened eventually. Yes, and what happened? What happened? The construction site was frozen, literally frozen, because it was winter. Yes, and then it's again separate story, financial story of construction. But eventually he got money, he got credit, and he completed the project. But I think Muscovites, Moscow citizens, they were locals, they were wondering what is going on there, looking at this strange structure. Yes, and you may see Konstantin and Anna arriving at construction site in their smart outfit, probably brought from Paris at that time. And for Melnikov, it was a really important photograph because it documents what we cannot see now, and it explains the structure. So all these hexagons, they are not actually windows. Remember, from the very beginning, the plan was to have 2 stripes rather than hexagons, right? 2 vertical stripes. To have basically a white tower with 2 stripes on the west and the east. But hexagons were in his mind from the very beginning as a way to save money, as a way to save bricks. So here is the proportion he calculated. Instead of 100 bricks for regular solid wall, he used 57.5, so almost twice less, using this aperture, structural hexagonal aperture. It's with the same structural stability, so weight leaking around 1, around 2, around 3, and the form, cylindrical form, it allows to distribute this weight, the load, very evenly. So idea was purely economical and purely structural. So many things in this house actually are about economic side. So many decisions of Melnikov, they were economically, financially driven. This is not a rich house. This is low-cost house. It is about his dream about family home, about his talent, and about lack of money. So all three components were important here, right? So if you look now, so you see some of them are used as a half, more or less, 60 out of 120, used as a hexagonal windows, and others are locked. So here you may think, if you don't know about this, you may think this is a solid wall, but in fact it's not. So this very interesting thermal image done during winter. So the red color is leakages of heat, it's glass, right? But you may notice, I don't know, from my side, is it visible? Green, it's a little bit green, right? Green spots, these invisible apertures, and around it, orange, it's a brick, really solid brick. And this scale, it shows them, the more green, the more blue, the better it keeps heat, actually. So basically, these locked apertures, they served as accumulators of heat in this house. And it's very interesting because everybody wondering what is inside. So we checked, not we, our specialists, what is inside, and it's very sandy mix. It's sand. Sand with pieces of clay, with some debris, some rubbish from construction site, but not too much, mainly sand. So it's very like an hourglass, and glass hour, right? It's with a lot of air in between particles. And air, as you know, is the best insulator. So this costs, this filling, this mix, it costs zero, it costs nothing. So, but it works, and my rough estimation, more or less 10% of his budget estimate here. He reduced cost just because of this. Yeah. We don't know exactly at which moment it happened, but already in autumn 27, you see appear this, he commissioned these frames for these windows. It is diagonal, and the upper part is movable without hardware, so we will see. Another structural experiment was about intermediate floors. This is a sort of, well, cross-beam membrane, if you'd like. So it is made of boards. If you put boards on side, it's 1 inch thickness, well, 8 inch high, 20 centimeters high. Yeah. So with a step of half of meter, you will shift this a sort of pancake. Yes, very light, very cheap, low cost. And it is just touching the brick walls. It's just laying on bricks. Important thing that you may notice the boards below. They are tongue and groove boards, very tight. The ceiling from other side, they attach under diagonal. And the other diagonal from the top, the floor, it's also these boards are also tongue and groove, and this is it works as a sandwich. Yes, so floor and ceiling are not just floor and ceiling; they are structurally important. So only in this case, this light structure works really as a horizontal platform in a sense, right? But because of time, it's 90 years old, because of shock this house experienced during the Second World War, when Moscow was bombed many times, and one of the bombs from first big bombing of Moscow, it is month after Nazi invaded, it's July 41, destroyed a theater on Arbat, which is a busy street right next to Melnikov House. And so shockwave from the bomb destroyed windows in this hexagonal windows from the north. And as you remember, the system of heating is organic. You hit the whole body. You cannot hit one arm or one leg. You hit the whole. So in this case, his system is not working. You cannot hit the atmosphere, right? So few winters, this house, few winters of the war, this house was not heated. It damaged significantly interiors, etc. And of course, these membranes were rotten. And for us, it's a big conservation challenge. We are coming for major conservation works about the big stories about these wooden structures, which are inside diameter is 9 meters, outside a little bit more than 10 meters. So 9 meters, and you have just this. You have no other supports, no posts, no columns, no beams. It's a magic. I know it's 15 people there, even concentrated load. It works. It is a sort of, this house, it's sort of a dream of any architect to be a little bit independent of engineer, because engineer always says either do additional support, yes, or says no. Yes. In this case, Melnikov was the master of the situation, right? So for him, it is a sort of dream. He's trying to push the boundaries, to go beyond the boundaries of possibility, beyond the possibilities, using very simple materials. And another idea to be independent of materials. You may do a lot with this, with concrete, with new stuff, but try to do this with simple things, right? Free plan. We discussed already that actually on the outer wall structurally does matter, and he proved this in the 50s when his son got married, and there was actually Melnikov redesigned the ground floor very easily. He demolished a couple of walls inside, he arranged another entrance, he separated two kitchens to accommodate the family of Viktor, to separate them from his family. Well, 10 years later, Viktor divorced and everything come back. So it's, you have flexibility in, it's house. And another story is about this window. So you easily can lock if you don't need this window, for example, and you can unlock to scratch the plaster and unlock any of these hidden locked apertures because they are not structural. I mean the fill-in. So you can. So the idea of windows as a models moving around the. There are few types of windows, and there are two types of diagonal. On the ground floor, like crisscross. Double glazing, of course, right? And in the studio, this is also diagonal, but they works differently. Similar in design, but works completely different way. So this is, we think this is against robbery, against thieves. So because they go towards each other. External goes in, internal goes out, they meet in between frames. It's much easier just to break it at all rather than to enter. Well, the other side of the medal are owners themselves, but he did the other trick for this. Here on the studio, on the third level, you have no problems with fifths, so they both goes in. So you take one, you take second one. And there is a more regular middle parts in the bedroom, which use hardware, hinges. This is example in the kitchen how to use this structural aperture for not for window but for other function. Yes, for the natural fridge. Yes, cold pantry. And light is crucial in this house. So these brick walls, they are really thick. It's 70 centimeters thick. 70 centimeters of bricks and stucco. And inside you feel very much like in a church, in a castle, in a tower. So very well protected. It's psychological. On the other side, you see a lot of light, different type of light. In the living room, this is this big window from the top from the bottom to the top, and this height is 5 meters. And in the studio, there are basically 360 degree of light, but it's different kind of light. Even there is afternoon, there is a direct sunlight. It's not so direct, not so dull, not so straightforward. You are bobbing in this light. It's very interesting light for architect and for artist. Sorry, I'm running out of time. I have to finish soon. Don't worry. And the only very special window in this living room, this is octagonal one, very strange one. You see, it's here. So, from my explanation, you may understand that here it's not a solid wall. All wall consists of these hexagons, right? And he left this strange window. And this is our reconstruction. It's not actual photo. It's our thinking, because it is a west, so it's sunset. It's very nice intervention of light on this carpet, brought from Paris, Art Nouveau carpet. And it's a view to the church, demolished a few years later. For him, it was really inspiring. And to use his diagonal window means to cross this church, to cross this view. Not nice, no good. So he used this vertical plank to divide the picture into parts, a bell tower and the rest of the church. And to do this, he made this T-junction, T-crossing, right? On the top and below, and so he got octagon. But the very last discovery last year with our specialist on colors, they are Dutch colleagues from, specialist on the style, and Theo van Doesburg, colors of the same epoch. So they discovered for us that it is white for many decades, frame, but it was brown from the very beginning. So it's like a frame for the painting, for the picture. It's not actually a window in a normal sense. This is window, this is for the light, this is for beauty. This is about Melnikov. Actually, in terms of window design, it's not really, not the highest mark, but it is not to open it, not for functionality, it's to enjoy. This is just for you to bottom line, right, about different types of windows, and you can guess about the thickness of this wall. If you look at, if you stay behind, back to this giant window, you may see this overhang. This is a studio, right? So you may understand the idea of Melnikov of interaction of cylinders. More or less, one cylinder talks to other cylinder, and this interplay of cylinder. It's not only outside; it's mostly also inside. And you see the third cylinder of staircase. You see a triangle. You see different colors. So it's quite a juggling with spaces, if you'd like. A couple of words about this big window. It's definitely for us, and the whole living room, the whole salon, with really good acoustics. There was an opera singing, there was a piano concert, so it was really a sort of salon for a certain time before Melnikov was out of the game. So for us, it is definitely a reference to previous epoch, to Art Nouveau, with not only with this carpet, but also with this giant window, which is 4 meters to 5 meters, and you see that except lower level, you may open it, and it is, how to explain it? It's effect of full integration in and out. You feel like on a grand terrace there inside, grand loggia, if you like. So it's not just open window; it's something more. You may think about it as even about glass wall. Pardon? Okay. But as I told you, it has really many references to the previous epoch. Actually, Melnikov used another metaphor of carriage with 2 horses. One horse is a past, modern tradition, classics, and then second is a modern. So he never contradict actually one to each other. So, but really radical space is a bedroom, which is not bedroom is our regular sense of the word. So this is how it looks like now. It filled with, it contains a lot of antique old objects, mostly from the family of Anna. It's all of them pre-revolutionary, before 1917. But I ask you, just try to imagine, just try, that it was completely pure, completely empty, originally, conceptually, before the war. War was like a borderline. So we have these black and white pictures, And you may see that the beds were there were different beds, double bed for parents, and 2 single beds for kids, for Lyudmila and for Viktor. They are like, again, like T letter, with separated by the wall screens, which still there, wall screens, but of course only visually separated. So the idea was that it is a common bedroom for the whole family. And these rooms with triangles, blue and yellow, this was just study rooms for day stay. For the night, the whole family slept at one space. Believe me, in the house of 3 levels, with more or less 300 square meters, 100 square meters each, it's enough space to arrange private bedrooms for everybody. So it was intentional idea of Melnikov, and there was a very special theory of sleep behind it. You may see that these beds, they are not normal beds. They are like platforms, podiums, pedestals. They are installed and they are growing from the floor. They are part of interior. Actually, the interior is never ending. It's like a capsule. It's like a total interior, right? And you cannot approach this bed. You have a little bit to jump on it, I think. I never saw it in reality because they were lost during the war. I told you the story about Nazi bomb, and first of all, this nice Venetian stucco, it was because of humidity, it was lost, and then they used structures, wooden structures, for the heating. So it was really, you should understand, it was really hard times at that time, yeah, at that period. Well, let's try to follow this. We think about this bedroom as about a sort of spaceship, if you refer to the science fiction movies of the 70s, a sort of retro futuro. And well, you come there and you sleep and you fly millions of years to the space. Roughly the, briefly speaking, theory of Melnikov, not really scientific theory, but theory about sleep was the following. So during day we are getting tired, we are getting older. During night we are not only restoring our forces, but we are getting younger, rejuvenation. Every night, every morning, it's a rebirth, it's a new life. It's inspired by a Russian religious philosopher and mystic, Nikolai Fedorov. It is, well, 19th century philosopher, and it is it's so-called Russian cosmism. We call this movement in philosophy. And meanwhile, another Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, a provincial teacher in Russia, who became a grandfather of Russian space program, he was also Fedorovian. So in a sense, Russians flew to the space in '61 because of these ideas, if you'd like. Meanwhile, another source was purely scientific, because in the 20s, among significant part of elite, Bolshevik elite, these intellectuals, idealists, all of them disappeared during Stalin purges in the 30s. Among them, and Melnikov was very close to them, they were his patrons, those people who were involved in Paris, in sarcophagus, and who helped him with land. So these people, they were occupied with ideas of immortality. They were really thinking that we are technical progress in science. We are really close to the eternal life. So it was a lot of experiments with blood transmission, etc., etc. So it was really taken really serious. And meanwhile, the story about the sarcophagus for Lenin, and you may see that these beds, they are similar to the platform for Lenin. This is not by coincidence, because, well, for him, story about Lenin was not a ideological story about that leader of proletariat. It was about eternal sleep. It was these things. Well, this is like this, yeah. But again, it's still a big enigma for us, and there are many losses. Not only beds lost, but also, as you see, the flooring, the final layers of the floor also lost, because well, it was also of the same color, as you may notice from the realistic study works by his son Viktor. Right? Okay. So we are working on on research, and we hope to eventually to have an answer about this, about materiality. And big challenge for the museum, and this museum, as it was said, is to restore them, to reproduce them, or to not. We have two groups of visitors. One big one, led by architects normally. They ask us politely to just take away all this stuff and all the things of Anna, because after the war it became her private space, somewhere to the storage, and to reconstruct these original platforms. Another part of the people who respect this as it is, and actually we are more with second group, because it's a museum. It's a half of life of this house was like this. Yeah. So we prefer to give information, to give pictures, and to ask your imagination to play rather than to reconstruct, to make a fake beds, fake platforms. Okay. And my last word about it. It is. You see, the surfaces are very shiny and reflective, so everything reflected from everything, right? It's without these objects, with these platforms, his kids, their memories. We wake up, we open our eyes, and everything. You can touch the air. Air has a color. Everything was. It's described as golden yellows, with reference to Russia's icons, to Russian religious paintings. Well, we are on the top, and the house's hierarchy is very simple. Below, on the ground floor, kids, wife, somewhere Soviet authorities. Second level, guests and laboratory for sleep, right? And top of the top is a temple. It's his studio, right? And in the studio, you may see the balcony, a mezzanine, which is actually a continuation of plane with cylinder, because this balcony, this is actually a roof of our cylinder. And this do-it-yourself table, this is done by Melnikov maybe a few months after they moved in, and it was his favorite place. So below here, there were many big tables for drawings, for actual drawings, but here he used small sketchbooks for wording, for sketches, with beautiful view to the church, to the north. And and this is just to remind you that this space, which is 9 meters in diameter, is just this membrane. Yes, this is the view during construction, and meanwhile, and it has 360-degree light, well, natural light. But for the artificial light, just one lamp, just one ceiling lamp, more or less Peter Beren's lamp. And if you put even 200 watts inside or equivalent, it's not enough for this space, 5 meters high, 50 square meters, so 250 cubic meters of air. So more or less, we think that life, and in the living room the same. So we think more or less the life was following the nature. Sunset, drink a cup of tea, go to bed, sunrise, wake up, go to work. You are in Moscow. Again, right in the center, but you live your own life, and time is going a different way. It's difficult to explain. And yes, and sure, sorry. And this is this view from his sketchbook, view to probably through this or this window to the church, which is now lost. Church is there, and we are here, but it is just because of a new building just erected a few years ago, and it's complete. Well, okay. So, very briefly, after the war, not easy life was there. So Melnikov was limited in money, but still he managed to do repair. In the 70s, still, when Cartier-Bresson was there as a guest and did his iconic shot of Melnikov, you see the facades were really in a miserable condition. In the 90s, the house was under threat because after breakdown of Soviet Union and new economy, new real estate market, active development around it, and you see this guy in the hard hat here. So it's 9 meters, two-level parking there, concrete wall, and for this fragile, very fragile actually structure, it was really time of risk. Fortunately, and we started our survey with getting grant with geology. We understand that Actually, everything is in sound condition, no problems with hydrogeology. It's magic, but at least the main conservation problems, I don't like to talk too much about it, but about these membranes, with wooden stuff, and about stucco, about surfaces. But in fact, structurally, building is in a very good condition. In this sense, we may say that experiment of Melnikov was successful. So, what is now? Now, last 6 years, it is a museum. It's a branch of National Museum of Architecture. We are preparing for big conservation works. We accept visitors, only one group a day, so just be prepared for the queues. But I really want to say that what you see here, what you saw here, it's just pictures and video, and it's nothing. You have to experience architecture yourself. And so I need to invite you to Moscow. Yeah, not all at once, by groups. Thank you. Thank you. I know I took, well, 1 hour, 5 minutes, but I would be happy to answer your questions, if any. Please.
The interior colors as they exist today, or is there any basis in historical research on those?
Mm-hmm. Fortunately, in the 90s, when they were last time, let's say, refreshed, in the 90s. His son, Viktor, was still alive, living in the house. He has his own color, memory of colors and paints, so he was controlling this. And, well, now we are doing this colors and paint survey, stratigraphy on this stuff. And actually, our Dutch colleagues, they said that it was really done a really good job. They did a really good job in the 90s. It's mineral, of course, mineral. It's very fragile colors, mostly, how to say, based on glue-based colors. So it's not washable. Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes, scientifically based. Yeah. And we try, actually, our whole approach to the conservation of this is not about making it brand new, Melnikov. It is an old person. I mean, this house is old. We respect the older person, so our approach is almost vegan. We try to minimize our intervention only if it's necessary structurally or, yeah, for safety, for security. Yeah.
Could you say something about the electrical system?
Oh, electrical system, yes. The house was from the very beginning with all comfort of civilization, let's say, supply of natural gas, sewage, water, and electricity, of course. So on the ground level, so it receives electricity from the city, from municipal supplier. But on the ground floor, the electrical system is all this wiring. It's exposed, open. On the second and third level, it is on first and second. Yeah, it's hidden. And the first thing we did in the house, we checked electricity, electrical stuff, installations. And there, as you may notice, there are many historical lamps, different types, and all these sockets and all this. Yeah. Am I answering? Did I answer your question?
Yes, I just noticed on the photographs it was running on the surface of the walls. The wires were just exposed.
You mean at which spaces? On the ground level, they were always exposed. On the second level, they were partially exposed, but with time, he hid this. You should understand that Melnikov was Konstantin living in this house, and he was always doing small and big things, changing it all the time. So it was, you cannot see the house just for 1929. It has many layers of time, including these electrical things.
Thank you.
Yes, please. You mentioned the gold finish. Yes. Was it actually mixed with gold? No, he was too poor. but interestingly, that golden finish on the walls, and golden finish on the floor, may the same color, but maybe not the same material. There is a hypothesis, there is a main theory now that between the golden finish of the flooring and these rough boards, between the structural boards, tongue and groove boards, there was something that absorbs steps, something flexible, not rubber, but I don't know, maybe something modern, but maybe something simple like fabric, textile. We don't know exactly. It's gone during the war, probably after this humidity, after this rotting, they just rolled it up and threw away. So but we still, that's why I told about mystery of golden finish. Yeah. But it's a Venetian stucco, more or less. Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you for your wonderful lecture, and it was such a relief to see the house restored. When I was there in the late 80s, it was in pretty rough shape, and Viktor was there.
Thank you, Trevor.
Congratulations to you and the Schusev for doing it. I'm curious, this is a museum attached to the Schusev Architecture Museum. Do you have other sites, say like the Ruskov Club or other outside? This is the only one?
You mean other sites of Melnikov or other sites at all?
Melnikov first and then other house buildings?
No. It's our first and the only example at the moment. There are plans to expand our empire, architecture empire, museum empire. But, well, each branch, it requires funding, of course, you know better than me. But meanwhile, Rusakov Club, you mentioned, it is now in a good shape because it became a theater. It used as a theater, and it's quite good scientific-based conservation project. Yeah, but not all buildings of Melnikov in Moscow, they are in good shape. Unfortunately, well, that different situation for different owners. Not everything could be a museum, but for this, and last but not least, this our plan, big plan, to nominate it for inscription in World Heritage List, UNESCO World Heritage List. We are working on this also. Please, more questions? Yes. Yeah.
I think that's it. Thank you. That was
Thank you very
absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.